Hi.
Hi. Hi, you okay?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Oh, thanks so much for coming on at such short notice.
No problem.
So, just to introduce you to everyone who doesn't know you, some of the viewers do know you. So, Megan Fox is an award-winning journalist, author, and broadcaster, and at PJ Media. So, I've come across Megan over I've probably been aware of you for a good few months now, but you're doing some amazing work uncovering the family court over in America. And I've watched quite a few of your videos and your broadcast with Mike Volpe. So can you just introduce yourself and
Sure.
tell us how you all came to start, exposing the family court and how you found out about it?
Sure. I've been a writer for many years. I guess I'm going on 20 years now. I've always had a special interest in CPS, which is our child welfare agency in America. I've always been interested in what I see as the struggle between the individual against the state. The state. I've always been very interested in the power that the state has over the individual, and I'm an advocate for due process. I've written a book about due process, focusing on the Me Too movement and how that denies people their due process. Evidence is something that we need to respect in our laws, and that people should not be punished or rights being taken away without evidence of guilt. And I noticed a long time ago that in family courts, there's a real serious problem of a lack of due process that happens to parents. And for some reason, and maybe because it's in family court and people don't like he said, she said stories, um, nobody cares that your rights are being taken away and trampled in family court. People care when a police officer takes your rights away on the street, and there'll be demonstrations all throughout the land when a police officer violates your due process. But when a judge or a guardian ad litem or all these court actors, when they violate your due process as a parent, everybody just kind of shrugs their shoulders and nobody cares. And I find that to be, it's traumatic what's happening to people in these courts. And I care about due process, and so I want to let people know when I find occasions where people's rights are being violated. I like to highlight it. And more often than not, that ends up being in family courts involving our social services. So,
Yeah.
and I've been writing about it for maybe about 10 years, but the scenario that's happening in St. Louis, Missouri right now really put it on the map in a way that it hasn't been before. And so I'm hopeful that more outlets will start picking up this problem.
Absolutely. So can you tell anyone about the St. Louis scandal, about what's been happening in Missouri and the leaked Zoom call, and talk through, because it's quite shocking, isn't it?
It's quite shocking. It's not something that we didn't know was happening, because those of us
Yeah.
who have been following it know that these people are conspiring behind closed doors against the rights of the parents involved. What we've never had before, though, is a bunch of them on tape talking about it, and so someone on the inside who knows that this kind of stuff that's going on is, and we still don't know who the leaker is, but somebody on the inside of this group in St. Louis of 39 different guardians ad litem leaked a tape to the media, to Michael Volpe, about that showed them on a Zoom call, basically conspiring against a litigant who was coming before the court, suing some of them. One of the guardians in particular, whose name is Elaine Pudlowski, is being sued with some psychologists for orchestrating a plan to take away her parental rights by diagnosing Evita Tolu with a psychological disorder that she does not have, and that has been verified by another psychologist, diagnosing her with 3 personality disorders. Wow. That she doesn't have, when she brought allegations of sexual abuse against her husband. And instead, they ended up giving the children to the alleged abuser. In her case, there were police reports, there were disclosures made to therapists, school counselors, and it didn't matter. None of those things mattered, because these group of people conspired together, she alleges, conspired together and hid the evidence. of that from the court, and also ignored the evidence and did not listen to her children, and instead conspired to take her children away. And she's not the only one. Since her lawsuit really kind of broke the story open. But since then, 3 more people have filed lawsuits against the same group of people in St. Louis for the same things. 16 different families have come forward to say we were falsely diagnosed. One of us was falsely diagnosed with a mental disorder. Our children were given to abusers. And we have hundreds of people who have come forward with similar stories involving the same players and in St. Louis. And I guess we've just never had an opportunity like this before, where we see these people literally talking about what's going on this Zoom call. And I would encourage all of you to go and find that on YouTube, and maybe you can put a link to it, Sam, because that Zoom call is just something you really need to see it for yourself.
Absolutely. Lydia's good at this kind of thing. She's watching the live now. Lydia, if you're on still, would you mind finding it out? It's on Megan Fox's YouTube channel. Is it called Megan Fox Investigates, your channel?
I think the Zoom call is actually on Michael Volpe's channel on YouTube. So if you go to Michael Volpe on YouTube, and I think it's just under his name, and click there, you'll find it there, and you could drop the link in here, which would be great. Because that's a really important video for people to watch. And I would say that it just it's self-explanatory. I mean, we've got people on these guardians who are saying they're admitting to ex parte communications with judges. The presiding judge of the 21st Circuit Court, Michael Burton, is on the record on an email conspiring against the litigant coming in front of his own court, which is obstruction of justice. I mean, it's an incredible lack of judicial ethics. Not to mention, I believe it could be obstruction of justice. He has still not paid anything for doing that. There's been no consequence for him for communicating ex parte with attorneys about a case in front of his court. I think it's case fixing. And judges have gone to jail for that before in Operation Greylord in Chicago, where Cook County judges, 17 of them were found to be case fixing and doing the same sorts of things that we're seeing in St. Louis. And yet nothing has happened to them. No authority in Missouri wants to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
No, and it's judicial immunity as well, isn't it? It's like, I don't know what it's like over there, but over here you can't even sue a judge. I mean, I've heard about judges being sued over there, but here it's just unheard of. It's, and everything's about, oh, you can't interfere with the independence of the judiciary, and the appeal process is impossible. Even granting leave to appeal is impossible, getting to that stage. But it's an absolute shambles. So that's why I'm delighted that you're shining a light on it, because it's barely talked about over here, and the press are completely gagged. I mean, I know you and Mike had Louise Perkins on from Liz Perkins.
Yes, Liz.
Pardon. You had Liz Perkins on from the Expression. She seems to be one of the only ones. There's her and there's another one, Geraldine McKelvey, but they're few and far between. And even then, they, like, for example, with me, they can't even say my name. They're not allowed to say my name because it'll identify the case. And they're given such massive reporting restriction orders because, as you know, there are many parents who would risk breaking the gagging injunction. It's just the newspapers that are scared about being sued for massive amounts of money. But there seems to be, if there's any differences, there seems to be less privacy over in America about it. Is that right? Or is that just something I've...
Well, I think a little. Not much, but a little. I mean, the gag orders, we have the same problem with gag orders. Mostly, though, the judges never try to gag the press. That would be absurd. That would be just absurd. That would not go very well. I mean, they can do that in certain cases, like cases where it's maybe a murder trial and it's on television, and a judge can say, okay, this part of it we can't air, and so now the press has to leave the room. So they'll do that. But to put a gag order on a journalist would be really strange. I haven't seen it. I do see the gag orders, though, on the families, and what they do is they terrorize them and terrify them so severely that if they speak to press, they will be in contempt of court and they will be imprisoned, and they threaten them and say, you'll never see your kids again. And so once one of those gag orders comes down, that's the end of it. They don't speak to you after that. You know, the people are just too afraid. It's my personal opinion, and this is not legal advice, but it's my personal opinion that if I were in that situation, I would disobey a gag order because it's unconstitutional. Our laws don't allow for gag orders like that that are so broad. They have to be very narrow, and the intent has to be very narrow. You can't just take away someone's First Amendment right to post things on social media. You can't just broadly decide that a parent has no right to speak her own name. And yet in some of these cases, and one that I'm following right now, the mother is not allowed to speak her own name. You know, that this is not a gag order that's going to last. This is not a gag order that's going to be upheld. But they do, in the meantime, it causes a lot of problems because then the press can't tell your story, and, you know, it's a problem.
It is, yeah, a massive problem. So another thing I wanted to bring up was the Judgezellweger and the leaked recording. I think, again, that was to Mike Volpe, wasn't it? The leaked.
It was,
not leaked, but the audio recording of the 14-year-old girl who alleged that her father sexually abused her. And then, so if you can just tell people about what Judgezellweger did and the recording, please.
Yes, that case is just absolutely outrageous. I mean, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the 14-year-old is not telling the truth. Let's say that she's making it up for whatever reason. As a judge, if a child says to you, though, in open court, I'm being sexually molested, shouldn't your response be, okay, we're going to have a hearing about this. I'm going to put you in protective custody until we have a hearing and we hear some evidence, and then do that? But that's not what Judge Nicole Zellweger did. Judge Nicole Zellweger said, there's no evidence of that, even though she asked for no evidence. She did not ask for any evidence of it. There was actually evidence because the child had disclosed it to her school counselor before this court hearing. She also disclosed to her mother. She also disclosed to a doctor. So that's evidence that was not admitted into court. And instead, Judge Zellweger, because the child refused to go with her father that day, she put her mother in jail for contempt in order to coerce the child to go with the dad, and the child still said no. So Zellweger had her committed to a mental ward at the Children's Hospital until she...
The child?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the child. She had the child committed to a mental ward at the hospital, where she immediately disclosed abuse again, and the hospital covered it up and did not make a call, didn't make a CPS call, didn't call or if they did, they were told that it's nothing, it's taken care of.
This is truly horrific. I didn't know. I mean, I'd done a bit of research. I didn't know that the 13-year-old girl had been admitted and
yes.
taken to a mental hospital. That, I mean...
And from there, they released her into the care of an uncle who, we don't even understand how that happened, because the father lives in Montana, mom lives in Missouri. The uncle then gets her from the hospital, takes her to Arizona. And the only people we know in Arizona is the father's father, who's a level 3 sex offender. And he was the one who the father had taken her to the sex offender's house for a week and lied about it on the court record. And the judge knew this because she wrote about it in her decision. She wrote that it concerned her that he lied about taking his daughter to a level 3 sex offender's house, but she believed that he would do the right thing going forward.
What?
Yeah. So it's all on the court record. I printed it at PJ Media. It's hard to understand how these people justify what they are doing. This child never had her day in court. She was never allowed to present evidence that she says she was abused. And now she's being trafficked across the country by people who are not her biological father or mother to go God knows where. I don't know. The last we heard, we believe that she may be in an institution for drugs. But the strange thing here is no one thought she had a drug problem. Her mother does not believe that the daughter has a drug problem. I think there was one incident with marijuana. She may have had marijuana once, high school kids, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is not a kid who had a drug problem. She was doing well in school. This is completely, out of left field. So if they've put her into an institution for drug abuse, her mother wants to know why, because that's not in any of the medical records. It's not in any of the doctor's reports that we know about. So
It's just
her mother's
hideous.
had no contact with her since then, by the way, and they've never severed her parental rights or anything. She
No.
still has her parental rights, but she's not allowed to know where her daughter is.
Yeah, well, a lot of that sounds very familiar. It's astounding, and it. It never ceases to amaze me, even though the most hideous things have happened in my case. That I'll never cease to be amazed by what they're just continuing to do to children. I mean, the worst case for me it's just because Thomas Valver.
Yeah.
It's just hideous. The NYPD cop, the mother, Justina, fought tirelessly, didn't she, in court to protect her little boys. It was Tommy and then two other children, older siblings. And I think her custody was removed in I can't remember whether end of 2018, I think, or 2017, can't remember. Either way, she warned about severe abuse, and of course the family court, in their usual madness, removed her custody, gave them to the father, NYPD father, and then of course.
And I don't know if you know about this, but it just recently came out that Thomas Valva's mother, there's an article that was just written about. I retweeted it a day or two ago, where she is now saying that she believes that they were ritually abused.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Satanic ritual abuse.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it. And what was really bizarre about it was that there was this one article with very few details, and then that was it. Like, there's nothing else on this anywhere. Here it is. Here, I just found it. So, New York, there's a local channel, Channel 11, that is reporting mother's claims Valva's sons trafficked and used in satanic rituals. So apparently the kids disclosed some really crazy stuff to her about sexual abuse, child pornography, sexual exploitation, and trafficking. And that they were put into metal cages with no clothes on. And the oldest son allegedly reported 4 men and women dressed in black with satanic imagery on their t-shirts that met them at the home where they were in the cages. My God, the brothers would be abused with metal spikes and other devices. And this was the last I heard of it. So this comes out as a bombshell type of report, but no one else but one small local channel is reporting it. There was another thing that said they were taken to the oldest son reported he was taken to a funeral home where coffins were lined up with 30 evil clowns. So they're terrorizing them. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah, this is satanic ritual abuse without a doubt. I mean, as you know, my son's disclosed it's SRA, and they disclose, obviously, after a few of these disclosures. I'd never heard of satanic ritual abuse. After a bit of research, I thought, my goodness, this is a thing, and it's called satanic ritual abuse. They make it sound so crazy. I think that's where the crazy outfits come in, because when they're disclosed, they're not believed, because they throw in all of these such unbelievable, ridiculous things, but also pure evil things. So murders are taking place, and rituals and sacrifices of animals and babies, that's taking place. So people just think that can't happen. Surely, well, where's the evidence? That's what they think. But yeah, it chills me to the bone, because my ex-husband is just as evil as Thomas Valvas, his father, and these people, family courts, I don't know how many of these cases there are, but we just don't hear about them, apart from the ones that are prosecuted criminally. Of course, the family court, they just, you know, I wonder how many more cases of there are like this. But obviously he died of freezing in the garage, didn't he, Thomas
Horrible.
Barber?
Absolutely horrible.
But there was so much evidence. The mother provided so much evidence, and the family court, I mean, I don't think it's poor training. I think it's more sinister, because how can they make all these so-called mistakes time and time and time again? There's something going on. I don't think they're all, you know, I don't think all judges are bad, but, you know, it just seems to be report sexual abuse of your children about the father or another family member, and you've lost them. You've lost them.
Yeah,
you know,
it does.
I know very few.
It does seem to be that way. It does. And in fact, in so many cases that I'm following, that I'm looking at, there have been multiple, every time that these abuses are talked about, or, you know, you alleged, especially if it's in a custody case, it does seem that immediately the knee-jerk reaction is to not believe the person making the allegations. And we found through the AFCC, the what is it, the American something conciliation courts, there's like this group of people who do this work, right? And they get together and they train one another on what is happening, and what to do in these custody situations. And there are judges, and there are guardians ad litem, and there are all types of people doing this training. And they train judges to not believe women who come forward with abuse allegations. They train them that way. There was a whistleblower judge who did an interview with a California news team, who said, I'm a family court judge, this is how I was trained, and I made a terrible mistake because of it. And I put children with an abuser because of it, and they were molested, and he molested other kids too. So it does have to do with the training, for sure. And there's a problem that this keeps on happening, that people are not believed, the children are not believed, the mothers are not believed. There must be some way that we have police who are trained in investigating crimes. Why can't we tell the difference between a real allegation of abuse and a false one?
Absolutely. I mean, if that is the case with some of them, I think it's more sinister than that. But obviously, we can't make those allegations without any proof. But it's just more, you know, when you find out something else about a judge, for example, you know, like, for example, there's a judge over here that was promoted. What's he called? Fulham, Justice Fulham. He was a QC, and he was he was promoted to a High Court judge. And this is somebody who was affiliated to the 1970s, 1980s group, not the 1970s, a group called Paedophile Information Exchange. So it just gives you an idea. But yeah, of course, I do agree. There are judges who are just taught to think badly of anybody raising sexual abuse allegations in court, or you know, it's not always sexual abuse; it could be other kinds of abuse.
Right.
They're taught to be mistrustful. But you'd have thought that once something happens, like, for example, the death of little Tommy Valva or other children, then that would be, you know, a wake-up call to them.
You would think so.
But nothing ever seems to happen.
You would think so, sure. But nothing happens. Like Michaela Haynes, the story of Michaela Haynes in Missouri. You know, here's a 14-year-old girl who disclosed abuse multiple times. Her sister was raped by her father, and he went to jail for it. He went to jail for raping the other teenager in the house. And yet still the guardian ad litem on her case attempted to give the father access to this child. Over and over again, she tried to do this. And so it ended up with the girl committing suicide because she couldn't take it anymore. So Michaela Haynes killed herself because the court professionals who were supposed to be protecting her ignored every cry, every plea for help, and instead did the absolute opposite. And nothing seems to make any difference to these people.
No,
Samantha, I don't know if it's me or you, but I hear a feedback coming of our interview coming over the, is it?
Can you? I can't hear anything, but a lady I interviewed the other day from New York as well, she had the same experience, the same for I think a minute or two. How long has it been happening for?
Oh, about 5 minutes. It's okay. I can deal with it. It's quiet.
Okay.
If you're not hearing it, it's no problem.
I'm not hearing it, no.
Okay.
Can anyone else hear it on the comments? I'll just scroll down. I'm sure they'll let us know if there's any problems.
I'm wondering if it's
scroll down.
I turned off my Bluetooth in case it was happening through there, but it wasn't that. So
okay.
That's
it's just annoying, isn't it? I know.
It's all right.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks, James. Someone's just said it sounds. So if you're all right, I know it's annoying, but
it's okay.
If you're all right, it will.
No, it's okay. But no, it doesn't seem to matter. No matter what happens, and no matter which kids are murdered or commit suicide or are missing, it doesn't seem to matter. No one seems to sit up and pay attention to that there's a problem in the system. This is not a problem with the parents. This is a problem with the court system, and it's not just an American problem. Clearly, it's a global problem. We have the same issues with DSS or CPS, DCFS, all of these agencies that
Just can't hear you now, Megan. The sound has just gone off. Oh, you're back again. I couldn't hear you. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Public radio, which is one of our, that's like our BBC here. National Public Radio just came out with an amazing in-depth series that you have to read. It's called, here, I'll tell you, I've got it up on my screen. It's called State Foster Care Agencies Take Millions of Dollars Owed to Children in Their Care. This is an incredible series that they did. They partnered with another organization. They found that hundreds of millions of dollars in Social Security checks were turned over to the state. And the states, because of it, whenever they take the kids from foster care, if they're like a disabled child with autism or something like that, they qualify for Social Security. Well, the state takes the Social Security check when they have the kid in foster care. They claim that they're using the money to care for the child. But of course, we pay enormous amounts of money to go into the foster care system to pay for those children. Forcing them to pay for themselves, it's like out of a Dickens novel. You know, these children, when they get through and they age out of this system, they're left with nothing, and they should have been getting $700 a month for the entire time they were there. That should be waiting for them afterwards so that they can go live a life for themselves. But it turns out that these kids are now suing in several states, Alaska in particular, because they were left with nothing and the state took it all. Get this, the states are then paying money, big money, to third-party operations who are identifying through data mining these children who are Social Security recipients.
Oh, it's disgusting.
They're paying money, so they're saying we need money. We need this money to pay for the foster kids. But they're taking our money and paying third-party companies to data mine more of these children for them.
Yeah.
How? How is this happening and it's legal? And unbelievably, NPR's reporting is finding that none of this is illegal. It's all legal for them to do what they're doing. It's not right and it's not ethical, but it's all legal because, you know, the criminals write their own rules, don't they?
They do indeed. You've got that in one, absolutely. Do you want to, shall I ask people if they've got any questions for you, Megan?
Sure.
Would you be happy?
Sure.
I'm just scrolling down now, see if anybody got any questions for Megan?
I think somebody asked where am I based out of? I'm in New York.
Okay. Is that New York City or New York State?
New York State. Near Rochester area.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be millions of compensation payments in a few years. Yes, they will.
They will.
You know, one of the people who's one of these apologists for what's happening with the Social Security benefits, it really bothers me that they're saying, listen to this, this is what the article says, but many state officials and experts say there isn't the political will in conservative-leaning state houses to spend additional taxpayer dollars on poor youth, which is what it would take to stop using the children's own Social Security benefits to fund their foster care. What a bunch of baloney. There isn't the political will. That's nonsense. And first of all, we're funding foster care fully. How can they say they don't have enough money? It's just insane.
Exactly. They really don't. Yeah, exactly. I'll just get this one. Beck has said, what can we do? I think we need to expose any corrupt people within the industry.
What can we do? You know, the only thing you can do is continue to share these stories when people like me or NPR or Liz Perkins shares them. And when we write them, they need to be shared widely to get to the most people possible, because our mainstream outlets don't seem to be doing this kind of work. Now, I was very happy to see that NPR put this out. And I was also very happy to see that NBC did a several-part series about a couple weeks ago about court corruption and about giving children to abusers. It was focused around domestic violence. So we need to encourage those outlets when they report these things. Call them, send them emails, tell them how much you appreciate what they did and that we want to know more about it. Because these cases are so difficult and so complicated that most reporters, they shy away from this sort of thing because it takes too much work. It's too hard to do. It has taken over my life, you know, and it's very difficult. I'm losing money every month because I'm not writing what I normally am writing about politics, and politics pays the bills, sadly.
Well, thanks, Bill, for doing it though, because you know it helps. It really does. You know, even over here, you know, it does help. You speaking out in America is helping us loads. So thank you.
I hope so.
I appreciate
I
you.
hope so, and I hope to create a kind of a network of people globally who are reporting these things, and that we can all start sharing information between us, and getting those stories in Canada out in the US, and getting our US stories reported in the UK, and having, because we need to put the pieces together of this puzzle, and it's going to take a lot of people to do it, I think.
Absolutely, it does. It will take a lot of people. Laura has said, why do you think that the UK victims of the family courts are more gagged than the US?
Well, that has to be because of your laws, your specific laws. I think that the families in America here they're also under gag orders. It's our press that is less constrained. However, when you don't have press who wants to report these things, what does it matter? You know? You know, I would think that your laws have more to do with that, though, because we have some different laws.
Just looking for some more. Rebecca, hold on, that's a good question. Good question, Rebecca. How can we encourage victims to disregard gag orders? They're gagged because their voice holds power. It's a good question. How can we encourage them to disregard gag orders? Good question, Rebecca.
That is a good question, because I hesitate to do so because I can't give anyone legal advice. And of course, I always tell people to listen to their attorneys, because when you're in a court battle, listening to your attorney is if you have a good one anyway, is a good thing to do. However, if your attorney is a good attorney, they will also tell you that gag orders are unconstitutional. So hopefully your attorney will give you some guidance as to how to break that gag order and do it in a way that will get attention by the press and attention by, I always think back to the Texas case of Drake Pardo. I don't know if you remember Drake Pardo, but he was a 4-year-old. No. He was a 4-year-old who was medically kidnapped by a children's hospital, and they had no evidence. They just didn't like his parents, who kept questioning them about things, and they wanted the parents to stop questioning them. So they took him. They took custody of him. And what happened after the battle that ensued was incredible. And the judge eventually gagged the family because they were getting so much press attention. And the lawyer, I spoke to their lawyer myself personally, and he said, well, I wasn't gagged. So
Oh,
so that's how we got around that was, well,
yeah,
I'm the attorney
yeah.
and they didn't gag me,
Good,
so I'll give you the story. And then we
good.
kept reporting it, and we kept reporting it anyway. And the judge got really annoyed because, you know, he couldn't keep anything in his court secret. But it got all the way to the Attorney General of Texas and the governor, who both came out. The Solicitor General of Texas said, this gag order is unconstitutional and it will not stand. The judge needs to, you know, repeal it, or he's going to have the state come after him. And that's what needs to happen. That's what, that's what, and the governor even, Governor Abbott stepped in and said, yes, the Solicitor General's right. This is take off the gag order. This is not right. And it didn't last longer than like a week, because they got the right people involved to get upset about it and to make noise about it. And that was because they had the HSLDA on their side. They were homeschoolers, and they had the homeschooling legal defense aid that came to their aid and knows how to work the press and knows how to do these things. We need better legal representation for people in these situations. We need organizations like the HSLDA, legal aids, a fund. I think we need a big fund, and I wish some enterprising attorneys would make one to let people pay into a system where they would get legal representation if they needed it from CPS, if they needed it in family court. Maybe it would cost more than what HSLDA does, because obviously these are very expensive cases, but there should be something that gives parents better legal representation than what they have now.
Absolutely. Linda has asked, do you think you should have an open court with a jury? Good question.
Yes, absolutely. Courts should be open. Courts should be on camera. There should be cameras in every courtroom, body cameras on every judge. That's what I think. You want to put a body camera on police? Well, then you better put them on judges, because judges are the ones who are responsible for locking you up for the rest of your life. And they can do that without any notice, or to the public, I guess, that we don't even get to see what happens inside the courtroom. They're sentencing children to life with abusers, and no one is checking up on what they're doing. No one has a record of what they did even. Some of these cases in Missouri, they're doing off the record in judges' chambers. There's not even a court transcript. So no, none of that should be going on. All courtrooms should be open. I don't know about jury, or sometimes juries can be really stupid too. So, you know, if you want a jury, you should have the right to a jury, but also you should have a right to choose a judge if you just want the judge. Because in civil cases, you do have that, in some states, you have that option to choose a jury or the judge. And I think some people would prefer a judge, some people would prefer a jury, and I think it should, I think it should be up to the person who's got the most to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just see if there's any other. Laura has said, in the UK, the victims find that being an LIP, I'm not sure, litigant in person, is better for your case in the family court than having a solicitor. Do you think this is because it's about power between solicitors, barristers, and judges?
Does she mean a pro se litigant, someone who represents themselves? Is that what?
Yeah, that's right.
We call that pro se here.
Yeah.
I have seen cases where pro se litigants got further than they had with an attorney. However, we also have a very severe problem here with bias against pro se litigants. So if you're your own attorney, there are a lot of judges in the United States who treat you poorly right from the beginning because they are biased against you. It's a real problem that's been written about in lots of legal newsletters and things like that about the pro se litigant and their rights in court. I do think that, yes, there is a major problem with the country club atmosphere of our court system. And what I mean by that is the judges and the lawyers and the guardians, they all belong to the same social circles. They play golf together. They go to cocktail parties together. They get invited to the same conferences together. They may be friends. They may be, more neighbors. These are people who have relationships. And I do believe those relationships get in the way of justice. Absolutely.
Do you think this video that's been released will make a difference. I don't know which one you mean, Lydia. Do you mean?
I think she means the Zoom video.
That's it, yeah.
I think she means this
video. That would be
I hope so. I have heard from a lot of people that they feel like it's the smoking gun in this situation that we've got going on in family courts. I hope that that's the case. And I guess all we can do is wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope so then.
Yeah.
Let's see if we've got any more questions. Sorry, Paige, I'll just pin that. Paige has asked, what do you think is truly needed to overhaul the system? I mean, you said about cameras on
courtrooms. Cameras in the courtroom would be a very, very good first step. I also think that due process rights, at least here in America, we have Fourth Amendment rights that ensure that we do not get our property or our person seized improperly without a warrant. If that was actually applied to children's services and they had to follow the Fourth Amendment, very few of these kids would ever be taken the way they're taken. Right now, they completely ignore our Fourth Amendment right to not have unlawful seizures. They're just ignoring it. And in fact, I can't get a police officer to tell me why that is. Police officers know that they can't just walk into your property and take whatever they want. But when it comes to your kids, they let the juvenile officer do exactly that. And when you bring it up to them, they can't answer the question. So I think we need to have our Fourth Amendment rights codified in the law for parents, specifically for parents of children. So I believe we need a constitutional amendment, to tell you the truth. I think we need a constitutional amendment for parents' rights.
Okay, thank you. Chelsea said, Megan, do you have an opinion on the Brianna and Johnny Borkham case in Texas? I probably not pronounced that correctly. The Brianna and Johnny Borkham case in Texas.
I know that one, so no, I'm sorry, I don't have an opinion on that because I don't know it.
Okay. Beck has put, we have a constitution in the UK and common law, and if you cite it in a courtroom, they can't ignore it. Also, ask the judge if they are working under oath. Yeah, for some people, common law has worked for them. There are cases where common law has worked.
I have not been privy to any. I have not seen any where common law worked in America. What I have seen is when people start trying to use common law, they bias the court against them in a big way. They get accused of paperwork terrorism, and some of them have gone to jail because of it.
Really?
So I would never suggest trying to use common law in American courts. You will end up on a terrorist watch list. You will be called a sovereign citizen, and you will be jailed, period.
Wow, goodness me. Wow. I don't think there are any more questions, unless anybody's got any more questions you want to pop on before we end this. Oh, Chelsea is saying, so that case that you didn't know about, I'll just
Sure.
acknowledge that. She was abused as a child in foster care, had children at 11 years old. Now they have taken her daughter to punish her for speaking out about the abuse.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of cases like that where children went through the foster care system and then the system comes and takes their children. I have one in Cook County right now, Cook County, Chicago. She spent her life being abused in foster care by one foster care family. And when she had her children, the system took her children and gave them to her abusers, the same family.
You can't make it up, can you?
And no matter what she said and who she disclosed the abuse to, no one ever believed her. And now she has to watch her own children with the abusers that she escaped. And it's just a horrific case. It's a horrific case.
It's just awful. I mean, I know time and time again it happens over here. If somebody goes to social services, which is your CPS, I think, asking for help because somebody is a threat of sexual violence, then they can often just take them off a good parent, and then sometimes they're subject to abuse in foster care. It can happen. Obviously, we know there are some brilliant foster foster parents, so you know, I want to praise them obviously, but similarly it can happen that they get placed with people who are doing it for the wrong reasons. But yeah, Dawn has just said social services made false allegations about her and took her grandchildren into care for 15 months. It's just rife. It's a massive problem. I think it's the same over here as it is in America and many other countries, as you said, Canada, Australia. It's all over the world. It's but yeah, I think I want to thank you once again for what you're doing. The work you're doing is very much appreciated.
Well,
and you're doing it to your detriment as well, losing money, and
yes.
you know, it's not getting you the best stories. So
it's not
we need more
not
people,
enhancing my career any at this point, but it's, you know, I do feel a special connection to these people. I just have always felt a strong desire that due process be observed and that our rights are upheld. And if anyone is looking to fight for rights in this country or any other country, look to social services, because what they're doing is a heinous abuse of rights, parental rights, children's rights, and there must be something we can do. And I think we should keep speaking out. Thanks for what you do as well. Keep speaking out about it, keep talking about it, because at some point the dam will break, I hope.
Yes, oh man, it will do. Yeah, absolutely. And I was just delighted to see somebody else. I won't mention her by name, but another lady who's speaking out. So just, you know who you are. Well done. But yeah, that's what it needs, because sometimes parents like me can become very dangerous when they take all contact. That means we've got nothing to lose in many ways.
Yeah.
So we're dangerous to the system. So I really, you know, put hats off to those other parents who do that, and even the ones who are getting maybe the chance of small amount of contact, but are choosing no exposure is more important for the safety of my children and for others as well. So but yeah, the more of us that speak out in whatever capacity, I think the louder our voices are going to get, and the smaller their.
I agree. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for coming on, Megan. My pleasure. And what's your Twitter handle so people can follow you on Twitter and your Facebook?
It's at Megan Fox Writer is on Twitter. I'm on Gab at Megan Fox on Gab, and Facebook you can find me at Megan Fox Author on Facebook.
Great. Oh, thanks so much for coming. Oh, you're on YouTube as well, of course.
Oh yeah, YouTube. But you won't find me on YouTube. You'll just have to go to my Facebook page and click on one of the videos, and then you can subscribe. Because they hide me. They hide me so well that when I can't even tell people what the name of it is. You can't find it. So.
Oh well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. God bless.
Alrighty, thank you.
Bye. Bye.